Hello and welcome back to another episode of the IDK podcast. So, hello. Good morning, Meshach. It's someday in the future after I've edited this. And I think I want to start with just introducing who you are and like who you are to me. I think this is the first time the channel has seen your face and everything. So,
My name's Jared. I'm going by Silverman Walking on the internet these days. I'm friends with Sam Rodriguez. We met each other in high school. I think we met each other freshman year, freshman connection, so even before high school even started.
that's right.
We were buds. I was on crutches at the time. I remember this very vividly.
No.
And yeah, Sam just seemed like a really sociable dude, and I always bring that up to him nowadays, and he's always like, yeah, I'm not really the most sociable dude. But anyway, yeah, and then we found each other again in math class, had some good political discussions, started a podcast together, which was a somewhat success, like internally, not so much of a success externally, I would say. You know, we didn't really get anywhere with it. It only ended up going a couple episodes, but why I consider it such a success was because of how much fun we had doing it.
You were like my first foray into like partnered content creation. You were Meshach's predecessor.
I guess I could say the same thing about you. I mean, I guess I partnered up. Well, redact that. You weren't the first.
Okay. Ouch.
But you were the first in my young adult life, coming into young adulthood. You know, I had a lot of experience filming a lot of videos as a kid with different friends from school, and I would be like, hey, you want to come over? Let's hang out. But really, the subtext of that was like, I need an actor for my new film.
But you're here today because, and the reason why some people might be familiar with the name Silverman Walking, because that's your cue. Why are you here today?
Oh yeah. So I'm coming out with an EP, and I think as you're watching this right now, it should be out. It's coming out March 16th. Yeah. So I'm thinking that if this video is March 16th or afterwards, you can go check that out right now. I mean, finish this episode of Sam and Meshach first.
And afterwards, by the end of it, hopefully we'll have given you some good reasons to go check it out.
For sure. It's a 5-song EP. I collaborated with a lot of musicians and other various artists, visual artists, actors, people of all kinds of mediums to make this thing happen. And I'm really excited that I'm finally able to say that I finished something. Because that usually isn't what happens with me. I usually start a project and it doesn't go anywhere. So I'm glad that I had the foresight to actually get this thing done.
Heck yeah. So I have questions. I think we just want to keep this loose because, like, I think it'll be more fun if it's just a conversation. But I do want to start with, maybe because you just said that and because it's a good segue from my latest video and from what we were already talking about earlier, into like just creation for a moment. Like, forget about music, forget about album. Like, what drove you to like want to create something and put it out in the world? Like, what was the inspiration to do this?
I would say, well, the EP is called Getting Myself Together, and that title was initially thought about when I was writing a track that isn't on the EP anymore, just for logistical reasons. It was at a point in my life where I knew a lot about music, and I really wanted to create, but I had a lot of background and I had learned a lot about what it takes to create music, but I didn't really have that perseverance piece of being able to really sit down and just go for something. And so I opened up an Ableton Live project file and I titled it Getting Myself Together, not even necessarily thinking that would be the title, whatever would be made. It was just, I needed to get myself together. I needed to do something. And it was more about just applying myself. It wasn't necessarily about, oh, I need to share this with the world. It wasn't about me feeling like I needed to create something for a creative purpose. It was, I have the tools to do something and let's put that in action. I think thinking about something that way is really good for someone's mental health, which also then, kind of ties back into the idea of getting myself together. So,
like self-help almost.
yeah, absolutely. And there had been multiple stages throughout this album where I had to get myself together again, just happened over and over and over again. As someone who struggled with mental health, there have been ups, there have been downs, peaks and troughs. And so I would say it wasn't necessarily about creating specifically, but it was more about the broader idea of just doing something.
To that end, so I guess I know a little bit about this because I've been your friend for a while. But how long was it since like the initial conception of this idea until right now? And like what was that process like? I know you talked like, peaks and troughs. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Sure, I'll try and not get too personal. There's definitely, I have to watch what I say, but I didn't kill anyone or anything like that. Don't worry. But
I'll be sure to include that bit.
But when I was 17, I took a class at After School Matters, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It was called Future Music Creators, and it was taught by these two great musicians and producers. Their names were Max and Gerald. And they showed me how to use Ableton Live, which is a digital audio workstation, kind of like the stuff that producers produce in, to put it in layman's terms. I wrote 2 songs, just kind of experimenting, wrote and arranged them, and inside of this software, and none of it was real instruments. There weren't vocals. We didn't have any guitar, real bass, real drums, none of that. It was just samples, synthesizers, but digital synths, all digital stuff. And so I did that, and
2017, right?
this was 27. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Since the creation of those two, I had created more demos, and then I took those demos, and I want to say in 2019 or 2020, I decided I'm going to move to MuseScore, which is a musical notation software, and I wrote the music for it. And during that stage, I ended up kind of shifting some things with the idea that, like, oh, I want these to be vocal tunes. And I just cleaned them up and decided, okay, I want these instruments only. So I knew who I was going to reach out to make it happen. And I just kind of went in with a more revised plan of how do I actually get to a point where I'm comfortable releasing these songs. And then I finished that in 2021, around 2021, and then I had to take breaks. For mental health reasons. Stuff came up, and I always returned to this project as a way to get myself together. And I don't think a project of this small of a scale, this being 5 songs, will ever take as long as it did for me this time. It was an unusually lengthy process to make a 5-song EP, but I knew there was no reason to just scrap everything and start over. Things were taking as long as they were, and I had to accept that, and I had to just keep going.
Awesome. Well, now that you've answered that, I can finally bring out my trap card. That's the only reason I agreed to do this interview in the first place with you. I heard there was a certain trombonist that was supposed to be on this album.
Yeah, Sam was going to be on the album. I ended up cutting some songs, changing things around so that I didn't need...
I didn't get to ask.
Oh, all right. I apologize.
Why do you hate me? Why did you take me off the album?
I didn't just take you off the album. I took yeah, so I was left with a smaller group of people, that being my brother, Ethan May, who is the frontman for Jank Setup, which is a great R&B band that's been dominating the New Orleans R&B scene, and Noah Torito, who has a solo album, which you've talked about on your channel before.
Yep.
Great solo instrumental album.
Here, point in the direction of the screen. You can check out that album here.
Also, Seamus Masterson, who worked on the Noah's album. We both worked on Noah's album, and he plays violin. I should say Noah produced this EP and also played guitar. And also Jake Bell, who I don't know if you've ever met him.
I have met him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good musician.
Yeah, great drummer. So that's I kind of had to, and Eric Plant. How did I forget the lead vocalist on the album? And so I kind of scaled everything down, and I decided it was going to be easier if I didn't have to reach out to like a million different people. And that doesn't mean that you're not important. It just meant that the trombone on this album had to happen to be not as important to happen.
Anyways, moving on. Next question. So I've asked you this question before, but I think it's kind of cute. I hope you're comfortable sharing it with people. Where does the name Silverman Walking come from?
Silverman Walking. Have I explained this to you ever?
You have explained this to me, but I think it's awesome. Cool. I think it's a cool origin. So
when I was very, very young, my mother, as parents do, teach you how to cross the street. You look both ways, you look at the walk sign. And she would always point out that the walk sign, she would say, Silverman Walking, it's time to walk across the street. And I always remembered that. And so I think when people look at my little Instagram tag or wherever, they might think, oh, like Silverman, like a last name or something like that. It's not that. However, I am Jewish, so that kind of works hand in hand.
Yeah.
So
works both ways.
But that's the origin of the name, and what I hope, and this is a little egotistical of me, but I hope when people see that walk sign, they think of me and they want to listen to my music.
I was just about to say a second ago that like every single time I see one of those signs now, I think of Silverman.
That's awesome. I've tried to explain it to people, and like I've tried to explain it to my other friend Noah, and like my parents. I'd be like, yeah, like, don't you think this is cool that I have like free advertisements across the entire city? And they're like, yeah, it's cute. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it works on me.
They don't really get it. But hopefully eventually it catches on. So.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm going to release an album in 2025 called Red Hand Stop.
That's gonna be the name of one of my albums. No, it's a good thing that we'll have that on the record. So if anyone steals it from me, I can.
Steals it from you? It sounds like you just stole it from me. I'm gonna take you to court. So that's cool. So that inspired the name. Next, I was thinking, like, what artists or musicians, whatever it is, YouTube channels, books, inspired the creation of this album, or maybe like inspired your musicality on the album?
Yeah, so it was, I want to say 2020. I think it was summer of 2020, like when COVID was big, COVID was up front and center in everyone's mind, and I was working in Ableton, and I finally discovered that I could consciously take influence from other musicians and use chord progressions and things of that nature to create new songs. And so Don't Boat Me was the first time that which is the lead single off the album, Don't Boat Me.
Available now on all music streaming platforms.
Yes. Once I discovered that I could take chord progressions, I immediately went to Alan Stone's Spotify page because I wanted to take chord progressions from Alan Stone because I thought he's one of my idols. He's a musical savant. He is an R&B. I would say more soul. You would put him in the category of soul, but not like retro soul, more sort of like neo soul sort of music. He has like these blonde long hair. He has this great TED talk that just talks about life. It's something that I would definitely recommend. That's how I found him, actually.
But this great blonde hair too. I cannot emphasize enough these.
Oh, did you? Oh, you're looking him up?
No,
yeah.
No, I'm not. But
I see what you did.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see what you did. I think it's important. I think his hair is a defining characteristic. But he had a song called "Lay It Down" that I was obsessed with the chords of, and so I took that, and that's how I get. If anyone knows the song "Creep" by Radiohead, which everyone should,
I think so.
it's kind of a variation on that progression with an extra suspended chord thrown in there every once in a while, which makes it sound pretty soulful, in my opinion.
Okay, interesting. Because that's another question I had for you. When I listened to "Don't Boat Me," I it was like a little genre defying for me. So I wanted to ask you what genre you thought that song was, and then more broadly, what genre the album is for you. And then I have a follow up question for that, but I'll let you answer that first.
The former question is a lot easier than the latter. I would say, because I've been thinking about this quite a bit, I would say "Don't Boat Me" is bubblegum soul.
Bubblegum soul. Maybe the reason I have
I
a
don't.
hard time categorizing it is because I don't know what that
Right.
is.
It doesn't exist. I don't think so. But I think in common, I think the melody and the lyrics really attribute it to, and the glockenspiel really give it kind of a bubblegummy sort of sound. Now, when you look up bubblegum on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm going to do right now, um, now like not the chewing gum, like I'll type in bubblegum music, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bubblegum is pop music in a catchy and upbeat style that is considered disposable, contrived, or marketed for children and adolescents. I don't really like that definition at all.
That is the opposite of what your song is.
Well,
Well,
thank you.
it's marketable, but it's not like disposable at all.
I would tend to agree with you. But why I use the term bubblegum is because of the kind of, because it feels like bubblegum. Like, how else do you describe that? Like, it just, that upbeat sort of, it dips his toe into almost like a show tuney kind of sound.
Yeah, yeah,
Um
that's interesting.
and yeah, I think that that is the best way to describe it. The album as a whole, I remember I asked Noah Torito right off the bat when I sent him the initial demos before we started recording, and he said fusion,
Yeah, but
or
fusion is
alternative, or
meaningless.
alternative
Fusion
fusion.
means everything. It could just mean like a bunch of different genres.
I 100% agree. I didn't like that. I didn't like the idea of just saying that it's fusion.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's really, really hard for me to nail in a particular sound. There are Oriental, sort of Asian elements on the back half of the EP, and in the front half of the EP is more of that bubblegummy sound. And then in the middle, you kind of have a cinematic sort of uh, entr'acte of sorts. If I had to put a genre on the entire album, I'm gonna create a new term called yin and yang, because that's how I feel. I feel like you kind of have a yin at the beginning of the album and transitions to a yang at the end. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Well, you're creating your own genres then. Um. then you
it's
might
the only
actually
way I
find
can categorize it.
no.
I don't know how else to.
I like it.
Yeah.
Like I said. Um. I then this follow up question. I thought it was going to be the harder of the two questions, but it might turn out to be the easier. Um. If you had to describe your genre as like an archetype as a person, who would it be? And maybe this might just be like your target audience too.
Do you want to know the first thing that came to mind? And I'm gonna
Do
regret
I?
this. I'm gonna regret this so much. Ronald McDonald. I'm sticking with Ronald
You're
McDonald.
sticking with Ronald
I'm
McDonald.
sticking with, after it's out there in the ether. What can you do now?
You're right. I was gonna go Annabeth from Percy Jackson.
Is that like the main love interest in Percy
Yeah.
Jackson? Why do you say that? Why do you say that? I'm just curious.
She is a daughter of Athena, and I feel like Athena would really like your album. I don't know why. Oh god, I mean, it's a tougher question to answer, like why I think that than why I feel that. The character has sort of that bubbliness to her. It's part of what like is so attractive to her about Percy, but she's also like thoughtful, and I think that it's a thoughtful album. Has a lot of energy. There's like a scene at the end of the whole series that the album cover for that the art for Don't Boat Me has. I think just all those things combined just kind of pushed that character to the forefront of my mind. So
Now I feel like
why
I
did you
should
pick Ronald McDonald?
because because just the playfulness of it. But I do have another answer now.
No, I mean
That
you can't come back from Ronald McDonald. I'll let you say the other answer, but
my other answer, which I think is a more sophisticated answer, is the monster from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But the reason I say that is because the monster was, deceivingly very sensitive. And I think this album shows sensitivity in a lot of different ways. And I mean, art does in general. So maybe that's a bit of a stretch. But that kind of anxious attachment style, I think, is definitely very prevalent in the album.
and I think it maybe if you guys haven't listened to the album yet, go listen to it now because I'm about to go speak to a particular quality of it. But like Eric Platt's vocalizations capture that like anxious attachment style so well.
I think so too.
I think that there's just like really something special about his voice that adds a lot. So
I'm so glad that he's on it. I love him to death.
like out of all the artists and all the singers that you know, why select him for this project? You know, like I said, I think that he like his vocalization kind of represents maybe something that you're trying to get across, that like anxious attachment style. But obviously there's like character and there's like, I don't know. Why did you pick him?
Yeah, I think if Eric wanted to be in musicals, he totally could have been in musicals. He could have been the star of the show. Um, I think it wasn't necessarily, he didn't really have that sort of upbringing where it would have been natural, but the way that he moves his body and the way that he projects his voice makes you feel like he could have been the star of the show on some sort of stage. And I think that catered really well, especially to those first two songs on the album. And then the last two songs on the album that he sings on uh, have that sort of darker tone to them, or shall I say darker mood. And that was something that I didn't know how it was going to end up sounding with him. But it was taking all of that hopefulness, all of that bright energy, and saying, like, what would that same guy sound like after he was really, really hurt? And I really liked the final product of it.
Yeah.
But I definitely selected him more because of those first two tracks, for sure.
Okay. Speaking of darkness, I'm gonna ask you like a tough question, maybe a personal question. What is your biggest fear about releasing this album?
I would say one fear is that it's a genre that, as you've just heard, it's very difficult to describe the genre. And it's going to be something that not a lot of people have heard before. So I'm taking a big leap of faith with, I think any artist wants people to listen to what they've created. They've spent a long time on it and they want people to listen to it and they want people to appreciate it. And I still have a fear to this day that just nobody will really be that into it, you know? Because of how I've never been able to say, oh, it sounds like this. I've been able to come up with a couple genre-y words and smash them together to create some sort of rough estimate of what I think it is, but I could never really point someone to, oh, I sound kind of like this artist, or I'm very influenced by this artist, you know. I said Alan Stone, but this music sounds nothing like Alan Stone, you know. I just used the chords. That was pretty much it, you know. So I'm also scared because I do a decent amount of supporting vocals on this album. And when it comes to your own voice, it doesn't matter if you can sing or not. You still are scared to death that people like it. Because I've shown people a lot of music, not my own music, but music that I like. And I will show them it and they'll say, I'm just not into the vocalist. And I'm like, dang, it's just people's preference at the end of the day. It sucks. It's common for all of us, and I think it takes decades to really be okay with yourself. Vocals, out of any other instrument, is the closest thing to being synonymous with you, yourself, which makes it hard to detach yourself from what you've done and who you are at the end of the day when people go and end up, critiquing your work.
First of all, I like your voice. Okay. Second of all,
thanks.
Everyone that's watching this video is about to go click that link in the description down below and listen to the beautiful art that you spent so much time on. So you can trust that, right, everyone? Give them a look. Yeah, there you go. It only gets easier from here. This next one is, one of the first times I met you, I think I asked you the question. I've introduced myself to a lot of my best friends like this. I probably said something like, "Tell me your life story in 10 words or less." So now I'm going to ask you to do something similar but different. What's your elevator pitch for this album to someone in 10 words or less? No pressure, but I am going to put Jeopardy music over this, and I'm not going to cut any of it.
Out of a musical, Out of the Sea. Go listen. Can I talk about that for a second, the Out of the Sea thing?
Yeah.
It's something that just kind of came out of nowhere. I initially came up with the title Don't Boat Me after writing the tune without any sort of lyrics, and I just saved the file as Don't Boat Me. Similar to like saving the file as Getting Myself Together, And then I same thing happened with the next song, Tied Today. And then when Eric Andrews and I were writing Curtain Call, this idea of it's true, I'm swimming under you. These elements of water, the element of water just came up over and over and over again, and I don't know why. It was never intentional, but it created a nice theme, and I was able to capitalize on that when working with Nazar Benart on Instagram. Great Instagram handle, but also just like he does wonderful artwork. He's one of the best artists I've ever. He is the best visual artist I know personally, really. But we played with this theme of water, and we incorporated it in the artwork for the single and for the album. And I don't know, it just kind of came up subconsciously, but I just wanted to bring that up.
What symbolism do you pull from it, or do you? Or are you just trying to leave it to the listener?
Well, water signs. I've met a lot of water signs. A lot of them.
They're about a quarter of all people, Jared.
But yeah, been romantically involved with a lot of water signs for some reason. Definitely, it's been some crazy ratio of people that I've been involved with are like water signs, like 80 to 90% of them.
Oh, geez, beating the odds there.
Yeah. That's over 25% for any of you mathematicians out there.
Wow.
So I guess that's what you could take away from it, but I didn't do it consciously. I like Scout's honor. I didn't do that shit consciously.
Do you think it's a romantic album?
Yeah, it's definitely a romantic album. They're all girl songs, as in they're all about women. Yeah.
Do you think it will resonate more strongly with a particular gender than another?
Well, I hope that if any gender listens to this album, what they take away from it a lot of times the opposite of what the lyrics are saying. Don't Boat Me is about an anxious attachment style. It's about please don't leave me, please don't leave me. I want people to take away from that, oh, that's an unhealthy way to think. Same with Tied Today. Tied Today is about I'm constantly searching for someone to be with, for me to share this experience with, and it doesn't really matter who. I want people to take away from that, like that's not an okay way to think. There are lyrics in Paper Flowers, honey, it's all your fault. I don't want people to go and blame everything on the other person. I want people to take ownership of their own mistakes and their own. So Oh, that's a lot of this album is read into the lyrics and kind of take away the opposite. Now, by saying that out loud, is it kind of a cheap thing? Maybe a little bit. Maybe it's kind of not the greatest thing that I just spoiled the entire album by telling everyone that. But I think it's an important thing to say.
Yeah, I mean,
And it gives people some insight, I would say.
it does. It also, an album that I love that I've recommended several times on this channel is Freudian by Daniel Caesar. And I think if you listen to the lyrics of that album, it's pretty clear that you're not supposed to take all of the like advice of the album literally. Uh, I don't think that takes away from the beauty of the case study of the album. And like, I don't think it detracts from like the case study of love that is portrayed in that album. And I think the same is true of your music, right? Like it's more about the expression and being able to connect with the music and like maybe experience the cognitive dissonance of like, yeah, I feel that way about this romantic partner, but like I know it's not right. That's what a lot of Freudian is for me. I don't know if maybe that's the same thing you're trying to capture, but I wouldn't hesitate to express what you were trying to convey with this.
Cool. I need to go listen to Freudian now.
Freudian is a masterpiece, but still not as great as Jared May's new album. Go listen now, link in the description. So I think that's pretty much all I've got for you in the way of questions, though I will ask two more. One is, what are you working on now? What's next for you?
I've been writing something that I'm really struggling to figure out whether it's gonna ever be released, to be honest, because the lyrics are deeply personal and I need to make sure that it's something that I want to share with the world, or if it's something that I want to keep to myself. And I think there's going to be value in it no matter what, but I really need to take the time to gather my feelings about it, get feedback from people that are close to me, and really decide whether this next larger project is something that I should share with the world. And I'm sure a lot of people just hearing that little elevator pitch will be like, you should share it. But I will say, you haven't listened to the album yet. So you don't know for sure.
Well, for those people wanting that and who are excited by both this album and by you as a person, my last question for you is, where can people find you on social medias?
Absolutely. So, Silverman Walking, no spaces, no underscores, no hyphens. Pretty much everywhere. If you want to, I believe you'll probably put my link tree in the description.
That's right.
So that's where you can find me anywhere. But pretty much everywhere it's the same deal. I'm gonna hopefully be posting a decent amount of TikTok and YouTube short content. Yeah, I think that's everything. If you go to my link tree, you can find other socials too, like SoundCloud, Bandcamp, Facebook.
Merch.
Not yet. Not
But
yet.
soon enough. But soon enough.
Hopefully. Yeah, but go check out my link tree. Yeah.
Check out his link tree. Everything Jared will be in the description and in a pinned comment. Jared, thank you for taking the time to meet with me today and talk about your wonderful piece of art. I can't wait for the world to see it.
Sam, thank you. You're such a homie for doing this.
My absolute pleasure.
It was so fun.
Do you want to go ahead and tell the Meshach and the Schmackers that we'll see them later?
Meshach, Schmackers. Sam, we'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your week.
And
bye-bye.
What's their piece of advice for today?
Piece of advice is just check it out. Give my thingy a couple listens.
That's right. Your advice is to give his thingy a little listen. All right, I love you guys. Bye.
Bye.
One more thing before we go, Jared. I've got a question here that I never got to ask. How many sandwiches would you estimate that you ate during the creation of this album total?
Okay, so I had a decent amount of salads, and if you've ever seen the video how many sandwiches are in a salad, then you'll know that there's a lot of fucking sandwiches in one salad. So a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Okay. More or less than 10.
Oh, definitely more than 10.
Okay.
I would even say more than 11.
Jesus.